Hey, what's happening, guys? This is Sean Ireton with the Nuinspiration Extraordinary Gentleman podcast. I've got another topic to explore with you guys today, and that is to stop blindly following style influencers, magazines, and other sources that tell you what to wear, why to wear it, and all that stuff. So, here's where I want to jump in. There's those articles that say, like how to dress like this celebrity, or the top trends of 2018 you should be wearing right now. Stop listening to that stuff blindly, because there's a lot of stuff in there that will confuse you and throw you off track of what you should actually be doing. And so what this podcast is telling you about is what to actually do in this case where you're kind of following these sources and just kind of doing what everybody tells you to do. I know there's a little bit of irony here, but in terms of what you should actually be doing, it's understanding the basics and understanding some of the stuff that goes on before you start looking at these other sources. So, with that said, sometimes these can be helpful and they can give you a barometer reading on, what direction you can move towards, but there's no real advice in these pieces. They're really just what that influencer or writer wants you to wear because that's what they think looks good, or that's what's trendy right now. That's what, teenagers are wearing, right? So a lot of these times, and granted, there's other sources that will tell you some good information, that will give you some good style tips and things like that. But for the most part, the vast majority of these sources and influencers and Pinterest boards and things like that, they're not giving you the best advice. So I want to help kind of steer you clear of those and point you in the right direction. So, one other side note that I wanted to mention, that, if you're a grown-ass man who's 30 plus and you're not Kanye or Axl Rose, don't buy those skinny jeans that are manufactured with like 46 holes. Leave that shit to the teenagers. That's what's hot for them right now. They're going back into this phase that a lot of young kids went through back in like the 80s and stuff like that, where, garage metal and like some other stuff like Anthrax and a lot of these punk bands were getting really popular, and they were fighting against the system or fighting against the man, and their way of rebelling was to wear really tattered clothes. They just really didn't give a shit what other people thought about them. That was a trend back in the day in the 80s and stuff like that. And basically what's happening right now is that Kanye is basically influenced this trend to come back, and kids who are wearing these styles aren't really rebelling. Like, they may think they're rebelling in some way, but they're not. Like, one of the Kardashian girls are wearing these clothes, and it's like they got a really good life. They have nothing to rebel against right now. So just to give you a barometer reading on that, that's mostly for the kids right now. So if you're a grown man, don't really fall into that trap of those trends. Stay on what is right for your age. So again, don't blindly follow these sources of advice, because listen, man, following Pinterest pages or Instagram accounts that show you all the trendy stuff isn't going to help make you stylish unless you know some basics, and those basics will help steer you in the right path. So here's some of the basics that I wanted to tell you about, and the things that you should know about. So the first basic is to know your measurements. I've said this before in my first episode, but I'll say it here too. Get your measurements done at a well-rated local tailor, or if you're in the SoCal area and want me to come to you for custom made-to-measure clothes, I can take your measurements for you. These measurements are super important for helping you find the right clothes that best fit you. So what you need to do is use these measurements to shop either online or in person somewhere. Check out the sizing charts, look at how your measurements are directly correlated with what's available in that size, and shop based on that. That will not only help you save time with your shopping, but it's also going to get you better fitting clothes too. So That's a really big thing though, is time. It's going to save you. So it'll help you, save time on returning stuff that comes in the mail if you shop online, or help reduce the amount of time that you spend in the changing rooms. So if you do a little bit of upfront research using your measurements online and you want to go shop somewhere in person, that'll help you reduce the amount of time you're actually spending in that store. So use that to your advantage. The second basic here that I want you to do is research your body type. You should know what your body type is at this point. You either have a rectangle, an oval, a triangle, inverted triangle, or a V shape, or you're a trapezoid. So each of these shapes is typically what a man is. So a rectangle obviously is you're straight up and down. You're not always super skinny, but like it means that your shoulders are parallel to your hips. Your chest to hip difference is not very big. You may have like a 48-inch chest and not a 48-inch chest, maybe like a 36-inch chest and like a 34 waist. That's basically a rectangle. An oval, just a really big guy. I know there's some of you out there that are overweight, and it's something that you need to work on for your health, obviously, but for the time being, you need to shop for what your body shape is. So until you lose that weight, if you're an oval, shop for that, or determine your style based on that. If you're a triangle, you have really heavy hips, you've got some fat or some excess weight there in the waist, and you have pretty narrow shoulders, so you've got that triangle shape, and then you have like normal calves and things like that. So carrying a lot of weight in that midsection is typically what a triangle is. And if you're an inverted triangle, that means like you're one of those guys that are a bodybuilder, your shoulders are super broad, and then you've got a narrow waist, things like that. That's what that creates, that V shape. Or you're a trapezoid. So a trapezoid is basically a combination of an inverted triangle and a rectangle. You've got a slightly more narrow waist, so it kind of creates this trapezoid shape. So that's kind of the in-between. And so based on those shapes, do some basic research online and learn what visual tricks are needed to flatter your body type the most and camouflage the areas that you're not super confident about. So those are the key takeaways there. Basic number 3. What you want to do is pay attention to the proportions and fit. I just saw a tweet today about this actually. A relatively husky guy. He's not fat. He's just a little bit heavier with a large frame and was wearing a suit that was fitting way too tight. It was hugging his arms super close. It was cinched in at the waist so much it looked like he couldn't breathe. And his lapels were so slim that it made him look like he was shopping at the Baby Gap. He just looked really uncomfortable, and that's not what you want. You don't want to look like you're uncomfortable in your clothes. The commentary of the guy who tweeted the image actually said that he looked like a tightly packed sausage. You really don't want that. All you need to do is shop properly for your size based on your measurements. If you're a smaller, slimmer guy who can find decent fitting stuff off the rack, go to those stores. If you're big, go to those big and tall places and get your shit altered by a good tailor. Another thing that you need to look out for and be aware of is that some of these older tailors will alter your stuff so you look like a stodgy insurance salesman from the 80s, and that's definitely not what you want either. So what you want to do in those cases, if the tailor's a little bit older, if they're used to tailoring people for like older style of fits, a good way to tell is looking at the mannequins that they have in the window, if they have those mannequins. And this is at a tailor shop, by the way. So if you're going to a dry cleaner that has a tailor, typically those aren't the best tailors. In some cases you will find a good tailor there, but for right now at least, look for a tailor shop. Don't look for a dry cleaner that specializes in dry cleaning that just happens to have tailoring. So just keep that in mind for right now anyway. because it's really important. And do your research on Yelp. Make sure that they have some really good reviews and things like that. But when you go into those tailors, and like I said, if those mannequins have kind of an older style of tailoring, like the clothes are a little bit bigger and they look more old school, go in there and just specify that you don't want a tight or a slim fit, and you don't want that really big fit either. You just tell them that you want it modern. They'll understand what that means. For everything else that's not a suit or a dress shirt, things like that, just make sure you're not wearing anything baggy or too tight. Everything should just slightly hug your body. So it should fit comfortably, and it should not be baggy. If it's too baggy, then you're going to look bigger than you are. And if it's too tight, then it's going to look like you're trying way too hard to look ripped. And you don't want that either. So just make sure that your clothing is just slightly hugging your body in just the right ways, in just the right places. Basic number 4 I have for you is determining what colors and patterns will best support your personality, your body type, and your skin tone. So this is really important. So make sure you keep note of this one as well. Research a little bit of color theory. I know it's going to kind of feel like school again if you went to art school, but if you didn't go to art school, that's cool. It's pretty interesting, but look into some color theory and understand how color impacts emotion, because that will help you kind of determine what colors will impact your audience as well as impact yourself too. So go check out one of my other podcasts about enclothed cognition. This kind of jumps into that just a little bit. But what you want to do is pair those colors up with your personality traits so that people get a sense of who you are based on those colors. Don't worry right now about seasonal colors that those blogs talk about. Those are just another way of trying to tell you about trends and making sure you're wearing dark green during fall and stuff. Don't worry too much about that right now. Like, you can explore that stuff later after you get a handle on the basics. Focus on colors that evoke an emotion while complementing and contrasting against your skin tone. So for example, if you're a white dude, don't wear 90% white or off-white clothing. And in contrast, if you're a black guy, same thing. Don't wear 90% black or dark gray clothing. If your skin tone is more of a brown shade, don't wear a ton of brown. So basically what I need you to understand here, and the point is that you should not look washed out by your clothing, and you should wear colors and patterns that best complement your body shape and frame. So if you look washed out, it's gonna look really awkward. I've heard some debate of people saying that a more low contrast outfit with a low contrast skin tone is the best way to go because it brings focus to the face. That's not true. That's not true at all. It just doesn't make sense. It's not a basic understanding of color theory. It's not a basic understanding of contrast. The more contrast you wear with a lower contrast skin tone, there's going to be more focus on your face. So again, just do some research on color theory and try to understand that a little bit. You don't have to go super deep into it, but if you want to, go ahead. So to wrap things up, if I missed anything, or if you feel like I missed something, or if you have a question and you're on Anchor, go ahead and call in and ask, or comment if you're on a different podcast platform. With that said, you guys go out there and have an extraordinary day, and be awesome. Love you guys. Thanks.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.